Joe Burton, the CEO and founder of Whil Concept. Joe, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you on the program here. And I love this topic. We're really excited about your team coming to join us here in Atlanta. Excited to have you on the radio with us today. Give us a little background on Whil, and then we'll get into what is mindfulness and some of these key talking points.
So Whil is a digital mindfulness training platform. We produce programs to help employees reduce stress, increase resiliency and performance, and just be healthier and happier. We've got one program around mindfulness training. We incorporate meditation and then techniques people can take into their day-to-day just to be calm, cool, and collected. We have a movement program based in yoga, helping people relax the central nervous system, calm the mind while they're getting exercise. We have a program for teenagers called Grow, which is mindfulness for teenagers. And anyone who has a teenager, grab it fast. And then our first leadership program was created in collaboration with the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. This is the famous leadership and emotional intelligence program that was created at Google. And so those are the programs we currently offer.
That's exciting stuff. So tell us, give our audience a definition of mindfulness and really why all of a sudden we're all talking about it.
Sure. When we talk about mindfulness, we're really focused on attention training and awareness training, really helping people get in touch with how their mind works to help them reduce their own stress and anxiety, just enable them to sort of focus, show up and be focused and perform in the moment. A lot of people think that mindfulness is just meditation. Meditation is one of the techniques within an overall mindfulness training that helps people really show up as their best self throughout the course of the day. I think there are probably three reasons that the world is now talking so much about mindfulness. The first is, it's on the cover of every major magazine, from Time to Fast Company. There's a new business book on mindfulness and mindfulness in business every other week. So it's like in the conversation. It's the top three winners of the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the NBA championship. All of these teams are practicing mindfulness to help their athletes perform and be in the moment. So that's caused a lot of conversation. What is this stuff? And I think most importantly, there's been an explosion in science around mindfulness. So I think back in 1980, there was one study on how mindfulness can help with health. Since then, there have been thousands. They're coming out 80 per month this year. And that's basically where science is looking at how mindfulness correlates to improving health, reducing anxiety, depression, improving sleep, so helping people with insomnia, reducing things like chronic back pain. And I think this explosion of science is really what's getting people interested about maybe there's something here. And that conversation is now going squarely into corporations where so many people are suffering from stress and burning out earlier in their career.
What are some of the biggest hurdles that you face from some of these big employers, as you begin to talk with them about mindfulness?
I think that some of the biggest hurdles is when we're talking to a customer who doesn't have a personal experience with mindfulness. They have these, sometimes can have a notion of people in sandals burning incense. And that's not the case at all. I was one of those, a little bit on my background. I was the global COO of a 50,000-person division of a public company. And so I spent most of my career flying around the world stressing people out. And I would have been the last person, 5 years ago to say, let's bring mindfulness into the company. I would have been laughed out of the boardroom. I came to mindfulness, just out of crisis. I was dealing with chronic back pain for about 5 years to the point where it was really affecting my health. I developed insomnia, I developed asthma. It was really just all stress-driven. And so, after the fifth time of my doctor saying, look, I want you to give, the mindfulness a try. I think meditation is going to help you with chronic back pain. I relented, and, I'm so glad I did. 5 years later, we're working with some of the biggest companies on the planet to help their employees, advertising agencies like Havas and Ogilvy, University of North Carolina, Microsoft. And most of these customers are really interested in how can we help our employees, our students just be healthier and happier and deal with the pace of modern living. I mean, it's bad these days, and you think about what it's going to be like, 10, 15 years from now. It's where a lot of companies are in a crisis. What's going on with healthcare, what's going on with depression, anxiety, pharmaceutical usage, and turnover and absenteeism. It's a big deal. And so I think they quickly get over that hurdle of what is this to, oh, okay, I get it. I know why, so many companies are talking about it. I get why, sports teams are doing it. And, so that's kind of the primary hurdle for someone who's not that familiar with it.
Yeah. Ron, you have a question for Joe?
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. This is exciting stuff. One of my missions in life for a long time now has been expanding mental health services, and I worked across the country in getting mental health parity passed at the state and ultimately at the federal level. Still stay connected to the Carter Center in Atlanta and Mrs. Carter, whose mental health advocacy has been strong for many years, as well as working with Patrick Kennedy and others. What's exciting to me, and maybe you can kind of connect some of the new terms that are developing here for our audience, mindfulness and well-being and terminology like brain fitness are all sort of coming to the forefront. Can you give any sort of a connection between some of these ideas and thoughts, and how do they relate to each other, and where are we going with all this discussion? Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of names for mindfulness or mental well-being. We also hear a lot around, we use, brain training, attention training, situational awareness training. The folks at Google call it emotional intelligence. At the end of the day, I think different communities are really sort of figuring out what's the right language to deal with stress, anxiety, mental well-being, and all of these conversations are really opening up to, mental fitness is just as important as physical fitness. And, even people who are incredibly fit and healthy are suffering from the same diseases as people who don't exercise. And that's primarily driven by, how people handle stress. Do they have the tools to cope with it? And so I think as the world's exploring mental wellness, there's where I think a lot of companies, including ours, are trying to get language that's really open and relatable for normal people, right? It's, my biggest fear when I heard meditation, 5 years ago was like, look, I'm not into anything hippy-dippy, and that's just not for me. And only when I began to study it and understand what it was did I open up to, oh, okay, great, this is going to help me with back pain. I get that. It's going to help me sleep better. I get that. And then understanding the science behind it of what's actually happening in the brain, like learning to actually practicing situational awareness or focused attention. You're changing your neural pathways. You're learning to focus, not just in the 5 or 10 minutes of mindfulness practice, but throughout the other 24 hours of your day. And when you're able to do that, you get all those mental benefits that a lot of companies are a little bit shy to talk about, right? You understand you actually cause a lot of your own stress by worrying about the future, by worrying about the past, by thinking people are out to get you. I think Harvard University did a study. The average person spends 47% of their time with the mind wandering. And people whose minds wander, as it turns out, they tend to be, much more prone to depression and much more prone to disease. So they focus on everything except, what's the matter at hand. And it's not good for people. It's not good for their health, and, ultimately that's not good for business. So I think all of these terms are sort of friendly terms and opening up the conversation for people who have historically been uncomfortable in talking about mental well-being.
Right. On the corporate side, one of the terms that I like to use in the past, it's not part of the current lexicon, I guess, but I still kind of like it, is I call mental wealth, W-E-L-L-T-H, with double meaning for a corporation, that if you're dealing with these issues, will help your bottom line as well. So there is a lot of financial benefits in terms of expanding creativity and teamwork and all the different aspects of productivity that can come along with it. Is that what a lot of your studies are showing? And can you point the audience to some specific studies that might be reinforcing to those concepts?
Yes, absolutely. First, let me just say I love the notion of mental wealth. I just wrote it down and I'm feeling it.
Good. You're welcome to it.
Yeah. This is when we talk first on the science. When we talk to big customers, and some of our customers have 300,000 plus employees around the world. Almost every single company we talk to, they start with faster, cheaper. Okay, and that's kind of in terms of what they're looking for. And so they want to increase performance, they want to increase productivity, and they want to reduce things like healthcare costs and absenteeism. And we get that. Those are sort of table stakes for business these days, and it's a requirement to be in business. But the way you get that is actually by taking care of the individual, right? The individual, helping the employee deal with whatever it is they might be suffering from. So, the individual is looking to improve things like focus or healing time or self-control, or reduce things like, anxiety or insomnia or back pain. And so when you talk about this notion of mental wealth, what we're finding is and what the science has correlated to is when you help the individual deal with that, you get the benefits of lower healthcare costs, fewer days of absenteeism, lowering the amount of presenteeism, where people show up but they're actually not doing much because they can't focus. And that's
right.
where you get the big bang for your buck. What we're seeing in our own research is customers seeing, not only drops in absenteeism and healthcare costs, but employee satisfaction surveys go up. So people like their jobs more. They like being at their company more. And this really comes from a result of them having the training, the mental fitness to not take things so personally, not to be more collaborative, to be open to whatever is going on in the moment. The business world's pretty tough. Things are changing rapidly, and if you have the kind of mental fitness where you can roll with it, still show up as your best self, and not take things so personally, you're going to be able to perform better and enjoy it more. So
Joe,
that's what a lot of the science suggests.
Joe, let me ask this: when you're working with the employees and their families, and what do you say to people who think meditating might be too hard? How do you help them get engaged and embrace this?
Sure. So whenever someone asks me, is meditating hard, I say, yes, it is. So when I first started, the first few weeks kind of drove me nuts. The notion of sitting quietly or listening to meditation content for, 5 or 10 minutes initially was really difficult. And when they call it getting into a mindfulness practice, the reason it's called a practice is you really have to stick with it. You're practicing, you're actually training your brain to focus. And you do that by, focusing on things like your breath or your heartbeat or pressure points in your body, things that are always with the individual. And by the practice itself is, as you focus on your breath, you notice, I get distracted. My mind's going somewhere else. Let me bring my attention back. And doing that time and again, what you're actually doing is training your brain to be able to focus at any point during the course of the day, right? So beyond helping to lower your blood pressure, reducing your resting heart rate, relaxing your central nervous system, you're training your brain. And so there's no pill form for that, right? There's no pill form of mindfulness. You actually have to practice it. And the very notion of practicing it has a wide array of health and performance benefits. The real benefits are just wow, I kind of feel better a lot in almost everything that I do.
Wow.
You mentioned you had asked about some resources. You can, if you did any of your listeners do a search on sort of the science of mindfulness, you'll find many studies, literally thousands. We also have ebooks on our website at whil.com that give people the background on science in a relatable format. We serve professionals, so everything that we do is really, how does it work? Why should I care? For people who don't have a lot of time in their day. The University of California has a lot of research. Harvard University has a lot of research on mindfulness and the science behind it. And so your audience can find a bunch of things out there.
Hey, Joe, we've got about a minute to go, and I'd like to give you a chance to close this. And, one of the questions that and responses for our audience here is that what advice do you have for companies and people that are thinking about giving mindfulness?
Yeah, I would say that probably the best advice is get started and start slow, right? We usually start companies off when we're dealing with their employees. We'll recommend a minute a day. Try a minute a day just taking mindful breaks. We like to build people up, then to 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Most of the science around mindfulness suggests 10 minutes on a fairly regular basis, 3 or 4 times a week, really start to change your neural pathways, start to change the activity in your brain, and you start to see the benefits of, lowering your resting heart rate, lowering your blood pressure, and so forth. So I say give it a try and start slow. The last thing I would recommend anyone is jump in and say, I'm going to do this for an hour a day. I don't even do an hour a day. I think that's kind of crazy for busy professionals. But if you can build yourself up to 5 to 10 minutes on a fairly regular basis, I think you'll see your life change.
That's great, Joe. Listen, this has been an interesting segment, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your day and joining us. And again, I want to remind our audience that Joe's team will be present at our forum coming up May 24th, 26th here in Atlanta. Joe, you have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, and visitors can go to Whil.com and start for free. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.